I'm back again with another study. This is where we already are seeing the importance of a covering, and that covering was not necessarily a bad thing, but covering was necessary because it was a boundary. There were vulnerabilities to our sensuality. There was a need to protect that which is vulnerable. That which is vulnerable, there was a need to protect that. And then there was, right, a covering that already existed before all of before all the seamstress joined the scene, right? Before all of that, God was a covering. And so this is good now as we transition to talking specifically to God's daughters, that our covering is a gift from God. It is a gift that even when the cage from which we came is not capable of acting as our covering, that we already have a covering. And so even if that cage is not, and I'm gonna stop saying cage because we were liberated from the cage. We were liberated from the cage. And so being liberated from that cage, if we still aren't covered, then we have a covering. So the same lesson that Adam got was the one that we got to, which is don't listen to anybody, especially somebody who regularly sheds their covering. Listen to me. I got you. I am your covering, is what God says. And so we've seen that played out throughout the text, specifically for women. One of the places we've seen that is, and I kind of wanted to go in order. I think I can go in order actually. And so we can look first to Judges 12. I got a couple of Bibles open, y'all. So I'm gonna try to stay as organized as I can. But I got some bookmarks so that we can move as seamlessly as possible. And so the first covering, where again God reminds us of God's covering. I'm starting at Judges and I'm looking at Jephthah's daughter. Now, the story of Jephthah's daughter is an interesting one. These are some daughters that I am very grateful for, and grateful for their journey, and grateful for the wisdom that they teach us. And so even in their covering or lack thereof, there is wisdom. And specifically, there is wisdom for God's daughters. So bear here with me so that you might get you a little something, a little taste. And so in Judges 12, Jephthah is one of the judges. Now, the book of Judges goes through a series of judges, a series of leaders, a series of judges of the tribe of Israel. Now, the challenge is that as the book progresses, the judges get progressively worse. They become worse leaders. And interesting enough, throughout the book of Judges, while the male judges are becoming less than desirable, and I don't mean desirable in a sexual way, I mean desirable like they're not really good leaders. And as we see them get progressively worse in their leadership, we get spurts of women that are not only moving the story along, but exhibiting behavior becoming of leaders. And so Judges is a really good book as a woman. If you're looking to learn about some women in the Bible that really can make you proud to be a daughter, Judges is one of those books. In Jephthah's daughter, Jephthah is not seen as a matter of fact, he wasn't even the choice for a judge. He came from a single parent home. His mom was a prostitute, right? Like he was not your ideal king. And yet still he got the job. Kind of self-appointed, but he got the job. And here's how. Because he goes into battle. When he went into battle, he makes this vow to God, like, hey, I really want this job. If you allow me to beat this other nation, um, gather Ephraim, the men of Ephraim themselves together and went northward, said Jephthah, whereby passed over Ammon, the children of Ammon, and he goes to fight them. And he's like, God, please deliver them into my hands. God doesn't say anything according to the text. So Jephthah makes this vow to God. Okay, check this out. You deliver them into my hands, and I will sacrifice the first thing that come running out of my house. Now, I don't have time to do this as much justice as it deserves. You could look up a Dr. Nichelle Guidry, excuse me. You can look up Dr. Nichelle Guidry. She is a dean. She does a phenomenal job at the Samuel DeWitt Proctor as a keynote speaker in breaking down this story. And so I invite you to check that out. If I figure it out how to work this thing, I will put it down in the comment section or the description box, a link to it. And so Jephthah makes this vow for the only child that he has. He doesn't have any sons. He has one daughter. She's a virgin. And as any daughter would, when he comes back from battle and it appears they have won, she comes back tambourine in hand, dancing. Let's go, daddy. You won. Go, daddy. That's my daddy, right? And the Bible says that he tore his clothes and told her, "You have brought me low." Where does it say that? Because I want to read it to you. Interesting enough, gathered them. Okay, I don't want to belabor this. Oh, that's his dad. There it is. And it came to pass when he saw her that he rent his. Let me show you. Let me tell you how she came running for him. So this is Judges 11, verse 34. And Jephthah came to Mizpah to his house, and behold, right. Let me go up. And he smote them from Aor even till you come to Minnith, even 20 cities into the plain of the vineyards, with a very great slaughter. Thus the children of Ammon were subdued before the children of Israel. Now, we're not going to talk about genocide right now, but that's a whole nother conversation because Judges does have that in here. And I think in another video, I've already talked about how women and children typically became the casualties of war, and thus the beneficiaries of war from men or power struggle of the men in their lives. And so um, yeah, Jephthah's daughter would end up being similarly a casualty of war, but she was on the winning team. And so this is interesting. And Jephthah came to Mizpah to his house, and behold, his daughter came out to meet him with timbrels and with dances, and she was his only child. Beside her, he had neither son nor daughter. And it came to pass when he saw her that he rent his clothes and said, "Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low, and you are one of them that trouble me. For I have opened my mouth to the Lord, and I cannot go back." And she said to him, "My father, if you have opened your mouth to the Lord, do to me according to that which has proceeded out of your mouth. For as much as the Lord has taken vengeance for you of your enemies, even of the children of Ammon." And she said to her father, "Let this thing be done for me. Do me this one favor. Let me alone for 2 months, that I might go up and down upon the mountains and bewail my virginity, I and my fellows." And he said, "Go." And he sent her away for 2 months, and she went with her companions and bewailed her virginity upon the mountains, which basically means she went and lamented that she was going to die a virgin, without children, without a husband. This was her lot because her dad made a vow to the Lord to sacrifice her. And it came to pass at the end of 2 months that she returned to her father, who did with her according to his vow, which he had vowed, and she knew no man. And it was a custom in Israel. So he killed her, that the daughters of Israel went yearly to lament the daughter of Jephthah, the Gileadite, 4 days in a year. This was interesting because the daughter, her covering was her father. But even she had a revelation that the father was not her permanent covering because he came from the earth, just like the leaves. He came from the earth. The father was not her permanent covering. God was her permanent covering. And so she says, "Hey, do what you got to do. I know who my covering is." And so without us going too far into talking about her daddy, we don't have to talk about her daddy, but I think it's worth naming that this young girl sacrificed her sensuality, lamented her sensuality, lamented access to the wisdom, the joy, the delight that could come from engaging with sensuality, because the one who was her covering removed the covering so that the permanent covering that was hers could cover her. And how did God cover her? In a way that maybe we would say, that don't seem fair. And I agree, doesn't seem fair, but legacy. Her father sacrificed his legacy. He didn't have a son, he didn't have a daughter. So, back in those days, if your children were considered your legacy, then he sacrificed his legacy. That was his vow, which took her life. But now, God, her permanent covering, kept her legacy intact, where a group of women, it became a yearly lament for 4 days, right? The daughters of Israel, a community of women, would lament and memorialize and remember the sacrifice of this girl who remembered her covering. I can go on that, but right now I'm gonna move on.